Getting into the Pokemon trading card game is easier than ever before. But with dozens of products, multiple formats, and thousands of cards to choose from, where do you start? If you're building on a budget, then there's always the trusty theme deck. With a bit of cash and a lot of creativity, you can build something bold and battle ready. You're watching Deck Boss. Hi everyone, and welcome to Deck Boss, the show where we take classic theme decks and give them a competitive tune-up. This week, we're going to try and supercharge the Laser Focus theme deck from Unified Minds. Laser Focus is an unassuming little theme deck that offers a lot more competitive potential than you might realize. With a decent deck boss, a solid list of trainer cards, and some of the best psychic energy acceleration in recent memory, it's actually a great place to start for an expanded deck. Now, let's crack this open and meet our deck boss. The Laser Focus theme deck is built around Necrozma. This Harbinger of the Light is a basic Pokemon with 2 attacks. Its first attack, Barrier Attack, costs 2 colorless energy and does 30 damage with the bonus effect of reducing damage done to Necrozma by 30 during the opponent's next turn. Its second attack, Special Laser, costs 2 psychic energy and 1 colorless energy, and it does 100 damage base, plus 60 more if there's a special energy attached to Necrozma. As far as deck bosses go, Necrozma is an average pick to say the least. It's a basic Pokemon, which makes it quick to play, it has a chunky 130 HP stat, and it can potentially hit for big damage. But on the other hand, it's got some big drawbacks too. Its attacks are not cheap, it's not immediately threatening when it hits the field, and it's reliant on special energy in order to hit big numbers. To make Necrozma work, it mostly comes down to guaranteeing sufficient energy acceleration and finding special energy consistently in order to start punching holes in the enemy team. Now, let's jump back to the theme deck and see what it gives us to work with. Laser Focus as a theme deck goes from a mediocre pick to a solid one on the back of 1 card, Malamar. This topsy-turvy squid allows you to accelerate 1 psychic energy from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon. No joke, this card was the core of a number of powerful archetypes thanks to that wonderful ability, and it's basically an auto-include in almost any psychic-based deck in the expanded format. You get this cute little Mesprit, which lets you set up your Inkay early on, but it requires attacking, so it's a bit slow, which means we're going to pass on it. They also included a Dedenne that draws cards, but maybe not the one you're thinking about. This little fairy has a cheap attack, which lets you draw cards until you have 6 in hand, and while it is extremely adorable, it's a bit too slow for what we're looking to do. Moving on to the trainers, you get Mysterious Treasure, which is a fantastic searcher for Psychic and Dragon-type Pokemon. Your other searcher is the Supporter Card Pokemon Fan Club, which grabs you 2 basic Pokemon, which is fine, but I'd rather have some more Pokeball options in the deck. Your good draw supporters are Cynthia, Lillie, and Tate and Liza, which are each pretty useful in a variety of circumstances. Your pivoting options include U-Turn Board and the original Switch, which gives you a bit of recurring mobility in this deck. And finally, you get Weakness Guard energy as the special energy to power up Necrozma's Special Laser, which is decent enough in the mirror match, saving you from its psychic weakness. And as for the rest, don't worry about it. Laser Focus just kinda works. It has just enough tools to get a few Malamar into play, which makes powering up your deck boss a pretty simple affair. With the Malamars and Mysterious Treasures alone, it's well worth picking up a pair of these theme decks to start building any expanded psychic archetype you might want. But of course, singles are always an option, so you do you. And now that we've got the basics, let's jump on over to Ptcgo to see how we can make this deck work. Okay, so this is one of the more straightforward exercises in deck building because it turns out Malamar-based decks are pretty straightforward. You pick a few powerful attackers, add Malamar, and tailor your supporter lineup to your individual needs. Consistency was the name of the game here, though you could also say that the deck is pretty linear as well. It's really just about setting up multiple Malamar early on and hurling attackers at the opponent turn after turn after turn. The 4/4 Malamar line is pretty straightforward. You want multiple Inkay on the first turn so that you can have multiple Malamar on the next. And you really need the higher count because smart players will immediately target your Inkay and Malamar to slow you down, so having multiple bodies in play is the way to go. Aside from our deck boss, our other attackers are a variety of flavors of Necrozma. Necrozma Gx is here to provide a big burst of damage with its Prismatic Burst attack, discarding all psychic energy from Necrozma to do 10 damage plus 60 more for each energy you discarded in that way. You can charge it up with just 2 Malamar and your turn attachment, and 190 damage is nothing to sneeze at. That 2 KOs pretty much everything in the game. Its GX attack is interesting as well, although it's a bit more specific now that we're in a V-dominated world. Basically, the attack allows you to do 100 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon EX and GX, which can make it a great late game finisher, but again, it does not affect Vs, so your mileage is limited here. Next up, Necrozma V is our latest addition from Battle Styles, and it's basically a juiced up version of our deck boss. Its first attack, Prismatic Ray, does 20 to the active and 20 damage to 2 benched Pokemon for just 1 psychic energy. It's a nice way to soften things up and spread damage in the early game. And its second attack, Special Laser, is literally the same as the theme deck's Necrozma, but instead of doing an extra 60 damage with a special energy attached on top of 100 base, it hits for an extra 120 damage on top of 100 base. So, with that special energy attached, you are hitting hard enough to KO pretty much every Pokemon V, including Zacian, which just happens to sit at 220 HP. Honestly, I wish I had 2 at the time that I was recording this episode, but hey, we'll make do. And our last Pokemon is Oranguru, which has the Instruct ability, letting you draw until your hand has 3 cards in it. It's a nice option in a deck that does a lot of discarding, especially in the early game where you'll often throw away your entire hand as you rush to establish your first few Malamars. It's also a nice insurance policy against things like N, which does come up pretty frequently in Expanded. Onto the supporters, we're running 4 Cynthia, 4 Lillie, and 2 N. It's a pretty standard package, and while I was tempted to run Professor's Research to help dump Psychic Energy, there are just too many combo pieces that I'm not too keen to dump as well, so that one's going to stay in the binder for now. I'm also packing 3 Guzma because Malamar can only accelerate to the bench, so you often need a little help shuffling your Pokemon around in order to get them charged up, and then to bring them back into the active. Plus, in this case, you do want to be sniping vulnerable Pokemon like Dedenne, for example, with Necrozma, so Guzma can actually do double duty for you in cases like that. Mysterious Treasure is the best searcher in the deck, allowing us to grab anything except for Oranguru. It's best saved for grabbing Malamar since it doesn't distinguish between basic, stage 1 or stage 2 or anything like that, but it is also nice in the early game to, yes, grab your Inkay while dumping some Psychic Energy into the discard pile for later. Ultra Ball and Nest Ball are the usual complement, and notably, Ultra Ball here is another nice way to just dump some Psychic Energy early in the game, and it allows you to search for Malamar as well because it is an Omni search for Pokemon. Viridian Forest allows for some easy energy searching, and its discard effect again allows you to dump Psychic Energy while searching for more, which gets your discard pile nice and charged up for when you have your Malamars established. Rescue Stretcher is the way to go here in terms of recovery, allowing you to get back key Pokemon, usually the Malamar line. This is especially important because you're liable to lose an Inkay or 2 early on in the game, so it really is a must-have, and you wouldn't want to play anything like Super Rod or Ordinary Rod here, because in those cases you don't necessarily want to be recovering energy to your deck, you want it to stay in the discard pile where Malamar has access to it. Floatstone provides some much needed mobility, and as long as the opponent isn't packing Field Blower or Tool Scrapper, this card can end up facilitating some big plays throughout the entire course of the game. You need to accelerate to the bench with Malamar, so this card is arguably your best friend next to Guzma. The higher count is also to help offset the effects of Necrozma Gx's Prismatic Burst, which can leave it stuck in the active without any energy, allowing the opponent to potentially recover or set up in your face. And finally, Recycle Energy is there to power up Necrozma and Necrozma V's Special Laser attack. 4 is a pretty high count, but you really need to see your special energy early in the game, otherwise you're going to miss out on a lot of damage throughout the course of said game. Also, once you get 1 or 2 in play, you can basically continue to recur them as you hurl your Necrozmas at the opponent, because they always come back to your hand after the Pokemon is KO'd, which is very handy. It's preferable to something like the Weakness Guard energy in this case, because once that's gone, it's gone, and it's not necessarily providing any long-term value. And really, as far as decks go, it is your standard Malamar build with a Necrozma flavoring, essentially. And while these are not necessarily the most versatile attackers that Malamar has access to, I think they certainly hit hard enough to kind of make the lineup work regardless. There's also some simplicity in the deck, and while it might not be as spicy as some of the more interesting Malamar variants like Spread or Malamar Tag Team or anything like that, I think as far as upgrading a theme deck goes, it's a decent place to start. And now that we've got our lineup, let's jump on over to the expanded ladder to test our Alien Squid combo out. Well, I was not expecting to run into other Malamar decks, but I'm kind of glad I did. I think it's a nice testament to how malleable the core of this deck is to see how you can use the squids to run big colorless beaters like Snorlax VMAX, or the many flavors of Necrozma that you have access to. Except for Duskmane, because that's just a steel Pokemon, but forget I said that. Malamar is really just good energy acceleration, and it opens up so many interesting options for deck building. Not just for Psychics, as you've seen, if you have colorless energy as the majority of your cost, Malamar can be a solid option there too. Also, I need to give a bit more credit to our actual deck boss. Necrozma can be a little bit underwhelming when it first hits the field, but once you slap a special energy on it and charge it up with Malamar, oh boy, it can start steamrolling enemy Pokemon. 160 damage coming from a basic one prizer is nothing to scoff at, and it can even two-shot a lot of VMAXs out there in the game, so the pressure is kinda real. I can see why they only gave 2 weakness guard energy in the theme deck, despite the much better recycle energy having been printed in Unified Minds along Necrozma. Because honestly, if those 2 cards were packaged together in the same theme deck, there's a fair argument that this thing would break the theme deck metagame. Having Malamar there in that same theme deck would basically allow you to get access to a 160 damage attack, which would KO pretty much every other deck boss in the game, and it would be able to get out a lot faster than most of them because they tend to be stage 2s, and stage 2s are slow, especially without access to a lot of the consistency cards that, exist outside of theme decks. I also have to say, it's a nice touch to see Necrozma get a V retrain in battle styles like this. And while Necrozma V didn't necessarily put in a ton of work here, it's just so cool to see that an old card designed specifically for a theme deck can get a much more competitive upgrade to kind of, still make it work in the very crazy, aggressive multi-prizer metagame that we exist in now. I'm also terrified to imagine what a Necrozma VMAX might look like. I don't know if we're going to be getting one of those in the upcoming Chilling Rain set, or if there is one planned for later down the road, but I can kind of just imagine, attach a special energy and do 100 plus 200 more damage, which would be incredibly busted, but I don't know, not out of the question. And anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video as always. Leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. I am looking to pre-order some of the new V battle decks, since it's pretty clear at this point that theme decks are no longer a thing. So if you have any suggestions for which ones I should pick up first, do let me know. I am finding it a bit hard to get excited for them though, because the Venusaur and Blastoise decks left a lot to be desired, and I felt kind of bad after buying a playset of those. But hey, if you guys are keen to see me tune them up, I am happy to try. And that'll wrap it up for this week. I will catch you all next time for some more deck boss fun, and until then, take it easy.